Hello,
Yes, my
everybody
name is
out there. I hope things
yeah.
are well. How are you, Ernest?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's been a very long week.
Mhm.
2025 has already started off to be pretty interesting. And personally, it has been great. It's just been going by pretty quickly, I
Yeah,
noticed. And so we definitely want to redeem the time and make sure that every day that we spend on this planet is a holiday. I think that's key,
yes,
and that we make the most out of it. So, how about yourself?
yes. I love that. Every day is a holiday. The little things we take for granted, just to keep rolling with where you're going with it. The little things such as just breathing that we don't even realize is a blessing. Is a blessing. So, I really appreciate hearing you say that. It was something I needed to hear as well.
Hmm.
Especially with the topic we're going to be getting into today. And to answer your question, everything has been well. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
life is always a humbling experience. I feel like
Yeah.
without humility, there would just be chaos. So I
Sure.
appreciate the lessons, whether I see them as good or bad. They are wonderful blessings and lessons in all situations of life. Um,
Absolutely. Hmm.
and I just want you to start us off if you have a Bible verse or prophetic wisdom words naturally from your own self that you can share that can get us going for the week ahead.
Sure, sure. Well, for the audience, again, it's great to be back with you all. This is the faith that takes, and faith being an accelerator in every area of your life. And we want to start off with obviously with the biblical foundational scripture um, to define what faith is. Everybody may or may not know what that is. But in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, in the King James Version, says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. That's pretty clear. And then jumping down to verse 6, but without faith it's impossible to please God, for that he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So let's break that down. So faith is the spiritual substance. It's the things that you cannot see. But as we talked about, Ashanti, if you remember in a couple of other previous podcasts, the spiritual realm controls the natural realm. That
Hmm.
is the highest level. So everything that we need from the foundation of the universe and the foundation of the world was already created by our creator God, and he put it in here for our use. And so we are supposed to be creative beings. And so
Hmm.
it is very important, again, when you're dealing with intellect, you're dealing with knowledge, you're dealing with your five senses and world system constructs. Faith is something that is on a higher level. I know in my book, The Law of Biblical Mechanics, Principle 9, when we talk about the opening statement there says, with faith, we can overcome obstacles. Even skilled managers hit obstacles.
Hmm.
Finding solutions means having faith, using discernment, and being open to creative and sometimes seemingly illogical solutions. And I have a couple of examples of that where me personally, when I was at my previous position as a municipal engineer, I received I guess, a community that wasn't doing well. It was, and I talk about it in my book. In 2008 and 2009, we had the housing crisis and the economic crisis, and a lot of communities were hurting. Long story short, I was assigned a community here in the south of Chicago. It was doing really, really bad. It was last in revenue, and we had a lot of projects. It was a pretty decent sized town. It had a little over 40,000 residents, a lot of old infrastructure, and I had to figure out how can we make this a revenue generator. Again, as I talked about before, I looked at what we had, the resources that we had. We had a lot of projects and a lot of comprehensive plans, but no money. So
Hmm.
that put us behind the eight ball. So, long story short, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe you receive it, and you shall have it. That's Mark chapter 11, verse 20 and 24, where Jesus cursed the fig tree and the disciples saw it. and he basically gave mankind a blank check to
Mm,
call in what he needed. And I need to preface that whatever you're asking for needs to be in alignment with the word of God. You can't ask for somebody else's wife or husband or something stupid like that. But it has to be something that pertains to life and godliness, right?
mm,
So, improving people's lives, trying to move things forward. I think that's important. Long story short, I got a plan. And once I wrote the plan and confessed it, we talked about confession and the power of the tongue in the last podcast.
mhm,
Faith comes from the inside out. And once I put that there, all the resources started coming. A young lady that joined the firm, she was a grant manager and a professor emeritus at Purdue University. Ms. Val was very, very instrumental. We got together and I told her about the situation, and she used to work over in that community. She was the first Black female department head over there. We talked, and she knew that town up and down and sideways. And so, long story short, she said, "Oh yeah, we got grants and things like that from the federal government, and we put together, all of our spreadsheet of all of the projects." And I'm just going to tell you, long story short, Ashanti, we did about $20 million of grants from
wow.
2010 to 2015, and that town was at the bottom of revenue, and it ended up being in the top five of our company's top revenue generators, to the point where everybody was asking me what was going on, what happened, and I kind of told them this is we're doing as far as grants are concerned. And even the CEO said everybody's going to start doing this now. And so every community was going to operate that way. We were going to help our communities to find additional revenues to be able to do some of these larger multi-million dollar projects. But again,
Mm,
it goes back to faith. I mean, you have to believe as a leader that you can go up and above the norm, up and above just what you're accustomed to.
mhm,
Another quick example in Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11, the apostle Peter was a fisherman. Long story short, you can go back and read it when you get an opportunity. Jesus preached, and then Peter was out all night fishing and didn't catch not one fish. And as you know, fishermen, you catch what you eat what you catch. And they were frustrated, didn't catch anything, and Jesus told them to go back out and launch out to the deep and let down your nets for a great catch. Now, let's stop right there. Peter was looking at Jesus sideways because Peter was a professional fisherman, and he knew better than to put his nets down during the day, because then the fish would see the nets and then they wouldn't come in. Plus, his staff was tired. They haven't been paid, they haven't eaten, they were tired. And so now Peter's looking kind of crazy in the eyes of his staff. But he knew the miracle working power that Jesus had out of his mouth, and he went and did what he asked to do. And
mm,
of course, the story goes on. His net broke, his partner's net broke, and he probably hauled in more fish that day than he probably would in 3 years.
wow.
So, yeah, so it's when I talk about faith being the great accelerator, let's break that down, and then we can move on. But really think about what God's intent is. It's not so much answering our prayers, it's not so much operating and providing the answers to our faith petitions, but a lot of times He's trying to get rid of ego and get rid of arrogance as well. Because
Mhm,
you have to be willing to look a bit foolish in order for faith to operate, because sometimes it's going to not sometimes, I'm going to say most of the time it's going to have you do something to bring you out of your comfort zone that
yeah,
people are they're going to ridicule you for. They're going to say, why are you doing this makes no sense. And you have to trust that what it is that you heard from God is legitimate, and that comes from consistently operating in faith. We just said without faith, it's impossible to please God. That's Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. So, in order to please God, you have to operate in faith. You cannot operate in this sense knowledge realm only. And
mhm,
sometimes, especially now in the era that we're living in, we're going to need supernatural solutions to these natural problems that we have going on. So I think that's the great accelerator, especially for leadership, because we talked about in the past podcast that leadership puts you in a position sometimes of being vulnerable and not really, acknowledging your weaknesses and your
Hmm.
ego. We talked about all of those things. So faith kind of definitely puts you out there. And
It's
either it's
true.
going to work or it's not. You know what I mean? So,
It's true. And then also moving forward in faith without despair or fear, because, for example, myself in the workforce, I used to be so scared to ask questions. I used to be so scared. I thought that asking questions meant that I didn't know my job. I didn't know the task well. And that was fear. That was doubting my own self. And then as well as kind of a sense of like my ego at play. Like I wanted to be seen as like she knows what she's doing. She's
yeah.
knows the task. She don't know, she don't have to ask questions. She gets it. And that's what I was like priding myself on back in the day and not asking the right questions. But when
Mm-hmm.
I put that faith into my work and humility and
Mm-hmm.
not having that fear of asking the right people, because some people too, you have to have discernment of knowing who can guide you, who is that good leader in the office that wouldn't see you as what you think they see you as, whether it be stupid, dumb, or she don't know her job. No, there's always one person that's a personification of a leader in the office, whether it be your manager or a coworker, that will help you. So having that
Yeah.
discernment to know who to go to and putting the pride aside and ask the questions. Ask if you truly don't get it. If you need a additional help in order to help someone else, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think I'm coming to clarity with that as I grew up the ladder in my career. Like, just ask. Don't be
Yeah.
ashamed. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid. Use your
Yeah.
faith that you got it. You in this role for a purpose. Ask the question.
Yeah. And just to add to piggyback on the example that I used, the engineering example, when I started, when I prayed and I asked God for specific, instruction and what it is that I wanted, I had to decide what I wanted. And my decision making when I was going back through the plans and going back through some of the other things that were done before, I had a whole box full of plans that we just couldn't get funded. But once I engaged in faith and once I put that to work, I want the audience to recognize that it's something that I call the personal recognition system, PRS. It's similar to GPS in your car or when you're riding around. It kind of guides you. In other words, once you make that step, so in the case of Peter, when he was in the boat, once he made that step, now it's almost like things start coming to you that under normal circumstances, it doesn't usually work. And it's weird like that because it almost puts a demand on that principle of faith that we don't know really how it works. We just know it does. And
Mhm.
God needs your participation in making that happen. So as I decided I want this community to be the top 5 in this company in the revenue, and that was unheard of. I mean, they weren't making any money. I mean, they got really hit hard by the recession, but I was determined to take that, community because it had so many needs. And I said, man, we could work this for the next 20 years with all of the infrastructure improvements that are needed. And so once I did that, here comes the help. Here comes grant assistance. Here comes the money. Here comes, approvals by the city council. And I tell you, it was definitely a miracle how that happened. And we did it in a short period of time.
Mhm.
And I got recognized at one of our retreats too as well, which was funny. But really, I'm just laughing because it really wasn't me. I just put a demand on it and it came to pass. So I just wanted to point that out too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Using that faith and knowing how to apply it. So, with that being said, you're using the right faith. It comes with the lessons as well, and keeping the integrity not only with others but with yourself. So that's what I feel like should be our next podcast topic is going to be centered around when moving in faith, you have to have integrity or tell the truth. You know what I
Yes.
mean? because you're
Yes.
meeting different people and they having certain expectations of you, but those expectations are not your expectations. So having the truth that you stand by and how you work in faith and continuously applying it. I would love to get into that discussion with you on our next podcast, Ernest.
Absolutely. And I have one more example to share. And this, and again, I think I told the audience before, I attend Living Word Christian Center in Forest Park, Illinois. Anybody that's in the Chicagoland area, I really highly encourage them to come out. It's Dr. Bill and Veronica Winston. They've been around for 35 years, and their story from how they started a storefront church to now a 33-acre campus, the Joseph School of Business and Entrepreneurship that's probably in over a dozen continents across the world, worldwide ministry. I can go on and on and on. But he tells a story about how they first got the mall. It was on junkmalls.com. When they
Um,
first got there, I mean, it was a hole in the wall. It was crazy. And it wasn't even zoned to have a religious, a church area or whatever the case was. And they had to get in and they had to close by a certain time. And they wouldn't, the city wouldn't change the zoning. And he was nervous. He said, "Man, I told all these people we were going to meet Wednesday night and so on and so forth." So, that weekend before, he wrote down what he wanted, went to sleep, and it came to him, go to the mayor and read Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 4. I won't go into it, but it had to do with government being under authority and different principles. And he looked and he said, "Wait a minute, is this what you want me to do?" And that looks foolish, and he didn't even have an appointment with the mayor. So he called and they said, "Well, the mayor's in the council meeting, but we're going to give you 5 minutes and, we'll make an exception." So he went there, he read the scripture, and do you know this woman's face turned all kind of colors? She almost collapsed. She said, "Mr. Dr. Winston, I'll be right back." And do you know they gave him a temporary approval to get in there on that Wednesday night, and they never left.
wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. So he has stories after stories after stories, and you can go to their website. But what I'm saying is, you have to put yourself out there. Sometimes things is not going to make sense to the natural mind, but it makes faith. And so, as a leader, you have to be willing to look a bit foolish sometimes, because at the end of the day, your goal is to move your organization forward. You have a management sphere of influence that's very important, and you want to make sure that you're using every single tool at your disposal to make sure that you're getting the results that you need. And all
Mm,
of us can do that. So I just wanted to put that out there too as well.
absolutely. We all have that in us because we all have a sense of faith and the divinity within us. So
Yes,
once we
yes,
realize that, it's no pressure. You just have to move forward with knowing that.
yes,
So, once again, Ernest, it's always a pleasure. We always
absolutely.
end on a great note with great proverbs and prophetic wisdom and words from you and stories, which I truly appreciate as inspiration. I hope that the audience take it in as inspiration as well. But before we leave, could you please leave the audience with contact information on how they can get in contact with you, your social media, where they can purchase your book?
Sure, sure. So we have our book, The Law of Biblical Mechanics, Principles and Processes for Management and Stewardship. It's available Amazon Kindle, and it's doing very well. I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback. Organizations and individuals both can use it. It's kind of similar to what we discussed on our podcast as it relates to giving the biblical background and practical examples that you can apply directly in whatever organization or even personally in your own personal life. So I encourage you to help yourself to that. My website is rcepllc.org, www, and as well as erobertsrce at yahoo.com is my email. And, we're looking to expand to do speaking engagements and organizational consulting too as well. I think this is something that is really lacking in a lot of our organizations too, from the point of view that again, having these skills that can move the ball forward as it relates to getting projects done or just organizational development as a whole, and understanding that everything has a linchpin from the spiritual perspective. That's what makes this concept and this book so unique. So I encourage you to do that, and we always have fun, Ashanti, with these. So I
Yes,
encourage everybody to help themselves to that.
yes, please do. Have fun with us and join in. Join in on the conversation. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're also going to be moving our podcast to YouTube. So look out for
Yes,
that as well. Ernest is on LinkedIn as well as his website. And once
yeah,
again, thank you for tuning in another Sunday.
yeah.
Please stay blessed, stay at peace within yourself, and give peace without. So, once again, see you. Talk to you next week, Ernest.
Absolutely. You take care, and I want the audience to be blessed and utilize the law of biblical mechanics. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.